Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 828, and today's date is November 27th, 2015, and the title of this episode is The Current Economic Collapse News Brief. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, as we approach this holiday season, we realize the corporate media, the U.S. government, the central bankers are going to continually push the idea that we're in a recovery, that sales are doing fantastic, but we're getting some information now about Thanksgiving Day. And we understand that a lot of the stores were open during that time period. But from analysts, we're starting to see that that day was not that great. Traffic at stores, they've declined during the Thursday shopping compared to last year. And basically, SunTrust, Robinson Humphrey, says, "We believe Thanksgiving shopping was a complete bust." And they conducted channel checks in the New York metropolitan area, New England, the southeastern region, starting on Thanksgiving Day and throughout the night into Black Friday. And guess what? Traffic was either the same or a lot less in many of the areas. And it looked like a typical everyday Saturday. Nothing really happened. And they're a little bit worried about this because what they're seeing right now is that people are not really coming out and going out to shop and spend their money. Now, the Mall of America's in Minneapolis, the largest in the country, Edward Ruma, managing director, he says he sees less traffic than years past as well. He was there from 6 p.m. to 1 a.m. and 8 a.m. to this morning, and guess what? They're seeing absolutely nothing. Nothing like they wanted to see, with the unemployment down at 5.0%, where we're very close to full recovery. They're just not seeing what they thought they were going to see. Now, we understand today is Black Friday. We're going to go into Cyber Monday. And, of course, the corporate media, the central bank, U.S. government is going to continually push this recovery as hard as they possibly can to make everyone believe that this holiday season is fantastic. But we're seeing right now the opposite is happening. Now, we understand the yuan renminbi. China is going to be pushing this to become a reserve currency. Now, on Monday, the IMF is going to look at this, but Russia decided they are going to basically take the Chinese yuan into its reserve currency basket. And this move is expected to boost the yuan's presence in Russia's financial markets. And this is coming out right before the IMF decides on Monday. And most likely, everyone is expecting the IMF, unless the United States comes along and tries to put the kibosh on this, that the Chinese yuan renminbi will be the reserve currency included in the SDR basket. And basically, at this point in time, the big push to go from west to east is now on. And as more and more countries take on the yuan, they're going to push out the dollar. So we see what's happening at this point. We see the White House was on lockdown. A man draped an American flag climbed over the fence and jumped onto the front lawn during Thanksgiving. So the spikes on top of the fence, they are not enough. The buffer zone is not enough. So I wouldn't be surprised if they come out and say, okay, we need electrified fences or a bigger barrier because of this. And we can see this has been the push to continually take the government buildings and the people and completely separate them, because we know what's coming. We know exactly why they are doing this. It's because the system around us is collapsing and they're trying to protect themselves. They're nervous. They're afraid. Their biggest fear is many people coming up and protesting in front of the government buildings. Now, France is moving to basically get rid of all alternative media. I mean, the British government is doing this, and now France is saying that all conspiracy theories will be illegal by government decree. Now, it started off with Charlie Hebdo, and they decided to take this a step forward. Now, this is the same country where they marched along for freedom of speech, freedom of journalism, freedom of expression, and here they want to do is basically get rid of all those sites that don't agree with the government narrative. Now, in order to achieve this, what they need to do is basically take any website or anyone else that does not agree with the government and say, it's terrorism, it's a conspiracy theory. And this is exactly what they're doing at this point. So earlier this week, the Interior Minister of France, with no court review or adversarial process, ordered 5 websites to not only be blocked in France, but that anyone who visits any of the sites get redirected to a scary-looking government website saying, "You are being redirected to this official website since your computer was about to connect with a page that provokes terrorist acts or condones terrorism publicly." Of course, there's no proof. They're just doing this to certain websites, trying to keep the story as a governmental story. They don't want outside websites reporting on things they don't want reported. And we're going to see this spread around to many of the European countries because this is the model. And once this catches on, we're going to see Spain, which they've started to do with protesting and things like that. We're going to see the UK. We're going to see many other countries throughout Europe do this, and it will come back here to the United States. Now, China in Africa right now, they are building their first military base in Africa, right in Djibouti. Now, we know the United States has a base there as well. Now, China has been pushing into Africa, spending a lot of money on infrastructure, helping build highways, hospitals, schools. And on the other hand, the United States is in there saying, terror, 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 let us bring our military into this area because wherever Russia and China are, this is where the United States has to be. So what we're seeing right now, China has signed a 10-year agreement. They're building a base right on the Red Sea, and the base will include a port and an airfield. This move signals that China is shifting from an offshore defense to an open seas protection, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see some type of terrorism happen in this area. Now, out in Ukraine, what are we seeing? Well, the power outage is still going on. Kiev is not giving a clear assessment of Crimea energy blockade, and right now Russia is calling for Ukraine to say what is going on here. They understand there was a blast that took out the power transmission lines, and they're wondering why is it taking so long to bring the power back up. Ukraine has not paid for their gas, and they're saying that they have better options to buy the gas. Of course, what they did was they filled up all their tanks, and they're not purchasing any gas from Russia at this point. They're separating themselves once again from Russia. And it looks like Kiev is intending to delay the implementation of the Minsk agreements for Ukraine's settlement. The latest events confirm that Kiev will do everything to delay the implementation, in particular the political part, which is the agreement with Donbass authorities on basically having local elections and being separate and apart from Ukraine. And it looks like they're not even talking about renewing the Minsk II at the beginning of next year. So we're going to have to watch that situation very closely because we see things starting to ramp up in that area. Now, Russia, because of the down jet of the Su-24, is striking back at Turkey. Basically, Turkey initially benefited from Russia's food embargo. Well, it looks like Russia's saying we might be sanctioning some of the food that comes to Russia. Right now, the Agricultural and Food Security Watchdog said that they're going to be inspecting Turkey's food to laboratory checks, and they're going to be pulling products out that don't meet their quality control, like meats, fruits, things like that. So it looks like they're putting up some type of sanction on Turkey's food. Russia's also suspending the participation in the Black Sea for drills after Turkey's downing of the Russian jet. They're basically ending all military drills at this point. Now, what's very interesting is that the son of Erdogan, Bilal, basically, he seems like he's the mastermind of siphoning and moving the oil from Syria and Iraq into Turkey and then selling it off to other markets. And it starts with the BMZ Group, which is the name implicated most often in the smuggling of illegal Iraqi and Islamic State through to Western supply chains. And Erdogan's son is like the silent mastermind who's been responsible for converting millions of barrels of Syrian oil into hundreds of millions of dollars for the Islamic State. And we know this. This is why the United States never went and bombed the convoys, because they knew exactly what was happening. And as we know, the Islamic State was trained by the U.S., Israel, and other coalition forces. And now it emerges by Turkish special forces at secret bases in Konya province inside the Turkish border to Syria that they've been training in this area. The prime source of money feeding ISIS these days is the sale of Iraqi oil from Mosul. And basically, it looks like Erdogan's son is handling all of this. Bilal, he owns several maritime companies. He has allegedly signed contracts with European operating companies to carry Iraqi stolen oil to different Asian countries. The Turkish government buys Iraqi plundered oil, which is being produced from the Iraqi seized oil wells. And basically, he is funneling all of this to support the Islamic State. But this is what's amazing about all of this. The United States is up there trying to figure out where all of this is happening. They don't know where the convoys are, but they know exactly how much they're making. They have an accounting for everything. Now, from this information, we know exactly that they knew all of this. And there are two reporters that broke this story wide open. And basically, Erdogan decided that he was going to arrest these journalists. Now, in order to eradicate all the evidence against his son, Erdogan did what every dictator does when they feel threatened. They went ahead and they jailed the accused of espionage over the story of his son being involved in alleged arms smuggling and oil smuggling. And right now they're being held in prison, and they're accused of political and military spying by reporting classified information and deliberately aiding a terrorist organization. In fact, Erdogan personally sued Dündar and is requesting that he be given a life sentence, an additional 42-year term in prison on charges related to all different crimes they're basically bringing up. So what we see in Turkey is that the freedom of press has been steadily eroding in Turkey, and police have closed opposition television stations. Prosecutors have accused top journalists of writing tweets or columns insulting the president. Reporters have been beaten by mobs. The government is one of the world's leading censors of Twitter. They block YouTube, but they were on the front lines with President Hollande talking about free speech after Charlie Hebdo. And this is how you know this is all fake, phony, and absolutely ridiculous. Basically, it's a fascist dictatorship, and we're seeing this spread throughout Europe and the United States. So because all this information came out, what does Obama do? Well, he comes out and he accuses Syrian President Assad of buying oil from the Islamic State and helping fund the Islamic State. They're trying to tell the world that Assad is working with ISIS and trying to link those. And then he went a step further to say Russia was helping basically with the sales. So in response to all of this, the U.S. Department of Treasury decided to initiate more sanctions on Syria and Russia. They're saying that Russia was the middleman to all of this. So they sanctioned Russian companies with respect ties to the Syrian central bank and blacklisted Syrian-Russian businessman George Hazwani. And the Treasury's out there saying they allege Hazwani, he uses his company, his construction company, to facilitate oil purchases. Now, of course, what they're missing here is proof. They're just placing sanctions on people. They don't have records, and when asked about the records, they said it's confidential right now. Now, of course, this is what the United States government always does. They never produce anything. They say it's, security clearance, confidential. You can't have this. You can't see this. And this is what we're seeing right now. And we know why this is happening right now, because Russia is in Syria working with Assad. They want Assad removed from government. And they're trying every single tactic they possibly can to get Assad out. Remember, that is always the goal, the end. Now, the U.S., because of the shooting of the Su-24 is refusing to disclose the information of who fired at the Russian jet. The Pentagon refused to comment on any of this, saying that they have absolutely no information. Now, you're trying to tell me the United States just so happened to have a satellite over where the Metro jet went down over Sinai, but they have no satellites over what's going on in Syria with the coalition forces, the Air Force, bombing, and they have no information whatsoever. Basically, they have all the information. They just don't want to hand it over. And Halan came out to President Putin and said, listen, Assad cannot play any role in Syria's future, and this is the way it has to be. And of course, as we know, Russia is saying, listen, other countries cannot decide who can and who cannot be in office. The people of that country must decide. So what we need to do is we need to get rid of the terrorists. Once we get rid of the terrorists, guess what? Then we'll let the people decide. And we know from a year ago, 87, 89% voted for Assad. If Assad works with Russia right now, which they're doing, and they remove all terrorism and they liberate all the towns, do you really think the people of Syria are going to say, yeah, we don't want Assad as president? No, he's going to be up in the high 90s. And the United States will never get rid of him. And the United States and the coalition forces will never let it go that far. We know this. And this is why they're planning the next event. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.